And we're just waiting for Facebook to connect. This is so exciting. And we are live. Welcome, mighty mystery fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am thrilled to be here today with none other than Hallie Ephron, whose book, Careful What You Wish For, is out today in paperback. Hallie, welcome. Tell us about your book.
Thank you, Sara. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Yeah.
My book. I write suspense novels, domestic suspense. They're fun, kind of Hitchcockian. Reviewers call them deliciously creepy, but not scary. I would say scary, a little bit creepy, but not icky. I try to walk that line. So this one's about a professional organizer who's married to a man who cannot pass a yard sale without stopping. She tries, as I do, never to venture down in her basement where his yard sale finds, or his garage, or his attic. I'm sure I'm hoping a lot of people watching have that experience of being married to somebody. I call it a mixed marriage. You're married to someone whose relationship with this stuff is not the same as yours. And people ask me, did Marie Kondo inspire me to write the book? And it starts, the opening line is, Emily Harlow wasn't sure that her sock drawer sparked joy, which of course I am cribbing from Marie Kondo, but I've been writing about my husband and his crazy yard sale mania for decades. So Marie Kondo came along and I got lucky that she burst out. Her Netflix show started when this came out in hardback. So I was kind of riding the wave. It doesn't happen that often, but it wasn't deliberate. It just was a happy circumstance.
Yay. Well, we are thrilled to have you here. So our mighty mystery fans, I actually met Hallie in person when she was presenting at Crime Big this fall when her hardcover was out. Now today her paperback is out. My partner in crime, the amazing Jenna Blum, is going to be linking to it through our very special partnership with bookshop.org, which of course supports our beloved indie bookstores. So you can get a copy of Hallie's creepy, deliciously creepy book through that very special partnership. The links are in the comments. I want to welcome all of our friends and fans. Say hi, let us know where you're listening from. And you all know how this works if you've been here before. And if you're new, here's how it works. This is your time with this incredible writer, Queen Hallie herself. So if you've got questions about her book, her writing, the mystery genre, how she does craft a deliciously creepy book, just go ahead and put them in the comments. I'll get them right over to Hallie and she'll get back to you live and in person. That's what we are about here. So Patricia says, congratulations. This is so exciting. Rena says, hi. She loves creepy. Rena, you're reading my mind, girl. We all love creepy. While you guys are thinking of your questions, I have got to share just a few of Hallie's absolutely incredible blurbs. She's amazing. So Kirkus calls this book clever and says that Ephron's tidy approach to stowing clues, arousing suspicions, keeping the chaos of the climax under control, then tying up the loose ends makes her a professional organizer of this type of entertainment. In a word, it is neat. Wow, amazing review from Kirkus. Publishers Weekly gave it a starred review, says outstanding. Maybe the first domestic thriller to weave Marie Kondo's decluttering theory about discarding things that don't spark joy. After being a finalist 5 times, Ephron may finally win the Mary Higgins Clark Award for this one. I could go on and on. People are saying hi from the audience. Hi, friends. We're so happy you're here. We're so happy you're here. Lori Raider Day says, Hallie Ephron's Careful What You Wish For is a cautionary tale for the spark joy moment, a tidy nightmare of a story that won't be contained, a compulsive page turner that sparks anxiety. And I have to agree with that because I was immediately sucked in. Hallie, as you said, those of us that have been in long-term partnerships, we know how it works. Our partners may not share our same thoughts about clutter and cleanliness, and the disparity between Emily and her, her very neat and her approach, and her husband's sort of, reporting, it immediately, I was sweating from the first chapter. I actually was it did spark anxiety. And also what I loved how you did is you walk through from a fly on the wall perspective, her making this Instagram video about how she is pulling all the stuff out of her closet and how she's thinking ahead, she's gonna cut the video together. And you capture so brilliantly and so painfully that irony of social media and who we present to the world versus who we are in our homes. Talk about that. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, it really is a story that needed like something like Instagram, because Emily is a former teacher. So I'm a former teacher. I mean, it's all personal, right? When we write, somebody said we really only have one story and we just keep telling it different ways. And I know that's true, although the different ways are pretty different. But I mean, I've always been a person who just doesn't really like to save things. I don't save photographs. I have a feather collection of about 15 feathers that I've picked up. That's it. I just, although when you look behind me, you see all my. Oh, you're gorgeous. Anyway, the book really grew out of a fascination with what it's like to be married to somebody who wants to keep bringing things home and you keep wanting to get rid of them. It's also about what is valuable, because my husband doesn't drag things home because he thinks they're junk. I mean, and thank goodness for that, because right now we're on our 13th jigsaw puzzle that has been belched up by one of the trunks in our basement. And they've been so much fun and a lifesaver at this time when we're all in lockdown. At least we're really in lockdown. So I wanted to write about that. The other thing I wanted to write about was people who collect. They're not collectors, they're connoisseurs. They have a collection in their house, in their mind, and it has missing pieces. And and collecting for them, the search is to find the perfect thing that fits in that slot. And then there are people who collect because they lust after something, and that's often to what extent will you go to collect? One of the inspirations for me for this book was a book called The Map Collector, which is, do you know that? Yeah, I remember I read there was an excerpt from it in the New Yorker years ago, and I cut it out, and I have a file folder, a manila folder called Compost, and it's that the pages from that Time magazine are in there, because I knew I wanted to write. That's about a man who was a very highly esteemed seller of antique maps. He would get asked to evaluate maps when somebody acquired one. Is this genuine? He would go into libraries and help curate their collections. And it turned out all the while he had an X-Acto knife up his sleeve, and he would go into the little room where they let you take the rare books, open the book. He would have a piece of string in his mouth. He would put the string in the edge of the book, fold the page over, and leave it there until his saliva dissolved the edge of the page, and you could break it with a clean break, roll it up, put it up his sleeve, close the book, the almanac, and return the book. Of course, they don't check that every page is in there. So when he was outed, I forget exactly how, but Yale University, Columbia University, Harvard, all of the great libraries that had map collections discovered that he'd taken from their almanacs. And that whole thing, what he was willing to do, to risk in order to feed, well, it was also greed, because he turned around and sold the maps for quite a lot of money. But I was really fascinated by that, as opposed to the kind of collector my husband is, who, he's, I have to say the pandemic is very hard on him. What to do Saturday morning, He's usually out there.
Well, thank gosh he has stockpiled these puzzles for you. So now when you tell him not to bring something home, he's going to say, what if there's another pandemic? Uh, we have a question from the audience. Ellen would like to know, how competitive were you and your sisters as children? I have met Delia when she came to the Rochester, New York Jewish Book Festival several years ago.
Isn't Delia lovely? Delia is, it goes like this. It's Amy, me, Delia, Nora. And so Nora's 7.5 years older than me, or was. Delia is 3 years older than me. And Amy is 5 years younger than me. So Delia and Nora were, like this. And then I came along and I wanted a piece of Delia. And then Amy came along. And we're not bosom buddies, but we are close. And I will tell you, it's been one of the really nice things, if you can say that, of this terrible time, is that I have been closer to them now. I mean, we really do talk regularly. I've been playing online bridge with my sister Delia. Amy calls. I'm so happy to hear from her, and I get all the news about my nieces and nephews and my grandnieces and grandnephews. So the thing that we were not competitive, that was the question, because I didn't compete. I didn't start writing until I was 40.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think I have 16 books now. So you can tell I'm a little past 40. But I was the one who said I'm not a writer. I'm a teacher, and I am. I love to teach. For years, I taught in the New York City public schools. I taught in a private school in Massachusetts. I taught at the college level, people who wanted to be teachers. Then I went into high tech and I did training materials. So teaching is really in my, and the other, silver lining of the pandemic has been I get to teach my grandchildren through Zoom. Now, yeah, I know, it's actually been fun, which has been a big help for my grandchildren and for their poor parents who are suffering through this very difficult time. But Delia read my earliest manuscripts and gave me fantastic feedback. And she also said something that was so encouraging. When you start writing, you don't know if your writing is any good or not. You really don't, right?
No.
And you either think it's all great or it's all terrible, and on any given day you're wrong. I mean, so she read one of my first manuscripts and gave me a lot of comments, and I revised the hell out of it and sent it back to her. And she said, you're going to make it because you can hear and make changes. And that is something I've learned since, as I teach writing, is that there are an awful lot of writers who come right out of the chute very talented. Like the first thing they write is beautiful, but they can't hear criticism. If you tell them, if they often will ask, what do you think? And if you tell them what they think, they yes but you. And instead, what they should be doing is saying, let me write that down. Let me think about that. I don't have to do what you're saying, but I need to think about it. Because the thing I've learned about writing is if you give your work to the right person, and everything they say is going to be right. If they tell you it isn't working, it isn't working. But when they say, here's how to fix it, you just turn off. Stop listening. It's your book. You fix it. Fix it your way. And that's what Delia was so good at, was giving me the kind of feedback where I could take it and say, how I understand what's not working. How can I fix it? She didn't say, do this, 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 and this. And so I learned from that that's the best way to give people feedback and hope they can hear it. And if they can't, well, it's on them.
Oh, Hallie, I love this. I am just so many gems of wisdom here. Thank you. I feel like I'm sitting in on an MFA class. This is amazing. And it actually is a perfect segue into our next question, this time from Patricia. And she says, I'm watching you from New York. Patricia, welcome. We love New York. She said, at this point in your career, do you still benefit from beta readers? What do you wish you had known before you started writing your book? And what did you learn when you found an agent or wish you knew before you were published? So again, there's a few questions there, so we can unpack them.
Wait a minute. Give me the first one.
Yeah, let's go through them one by one.
Yeah.
She says, okay, so first, at this point in your career, do you still benefit from beta readers?
You bet. You bet I do. But
You
they
beta.
have to be carefully curated, like the collections in your house. You know, it's a mistake to give, it's a big mistake to give your book to certain people. And anyone who's been in a writing group knows that there's a kind of dynamic that can go on that's not good, where people can be mean.
Yes.
Yeah, and you should never be mean in a criticism. You should always just be factual. But there are also people who can't hear even factual feedback, and then they get upset. So if you're going to be in a critique group, it's usually mutual. So you want people who can both hear feedback from you, and also give it in a kind way, and give it in a specific way. If you give your book to, and I love librarians and English teachers, but they're not the best people to give your book to, you'll often get a critique that it's not from a writer's perspective. Say there's a problem with the viewpoint. Viewpoint is who's narrating, and is it a compelling voice? That's what editors always say, they're looking for voice. And that's in the narration. And if that's off, often someone who's not a writer can't phrase it in that way. They know it's not working, but they can't pinpoint for the writer what exactly it is that's clanking when it should be clinking. Yeah.
This is so helpful, Hallie. So how do you curate the right people? To Patricia's question and your excellent answer, how do you find that person who can give kind yet honest feedback? And in yoga, we have a word for that, ahimsa, kind, truth delivered with kindness.
Nice. That's nice.
How do you find a person with ahimsa, with truth but kindness, and who's can provide you that feedback that, as you said, is for a writer? Tell us, how do you find them?
I can only tell you my own experience, which is writing conferences are a great place, particularly if you're taking a class with someone and you're in a critique group with them. You can both see their writing. So you always want to play up. It's like playing tennis. You play better tennis if you play with someone better than you.
Oh.
Yeah, and you write better if your writing partner is a little better than you. That is the sad truth. So you want to see what their writing is like. Is it a good, but not so much better than that it takes your breath away. That's not good either. It has to be reachable. So someone who's better than you, but also you can hear how they give criticism, and also ask them, are you open to sharing manuscripts? How would you feel about that? Then try it. And if it's not working, say, thank you very much. I think I'm, going to pass from now on. So I think it's trial and error. I also think you need different feedback at different points in your career. Yeah. My first writing group was people that I met at a class I took at Harvard's, actually the Radcliffe Extension, which doesn't exist anymore. It was the Radcliffe something. Anyway, it doesn't exist anymore. But Arthur Edelstein was a wonderful writing teacher, and I connected with some writers there. A few years later, I went to the Provincetown Summer Writers Conference as a student, and I met another core of writers, and I switched writing groups, and then I switched writing groups again. So I think at different points in your career, you need different kinds of feedback. Sometimes you just need a change. You need to give it to different people. And you also want to make sure that you can bear to read their writing. I mean, I was in a writing group once where we would meet once every 2 weeks, and this person could write 60 pages in 2 weeks. I can't read 60 pages in 2 weeks. And then she would be changing everything before, and then you'd have to reread it. I mean, I wanted to shoot myself yeah. So, you can't guess that that's going to happen. So it's just trial and error, being open to it. I think it's harder if you can't physically go to a writing conference, physically take a class, because I think you just get a better sense of another person if you're physically there. So when the pandemic is over, take a writing class and open your antenna. Who can I invite to share manuscripts with?
Mm. Oh my God, Hallie, I just adore you. I love these answers. Thank you so
Let me
much.
just, let me
Um,
just, one sec. I want to.
and Patricia, we'll get right to your next. Patricia, thank you for these excellent questions, and we're going to get to the
I
rest
have
of
a book out called "Writing and Selling Your Mystery Novel."
your.
Yeah,
Yay!
and there's a whole section in it on critique groups.
Oh,
So
perfect. Okay, we will be picking up a copy of that, and I'm sure Patricia will as well, and I know I will. And I want to get to Patricia, your next question. What do you wish you had known before you started writing this book? Is there anything, Hallie? Or are you sort of at the
oh,
point in your
this
career
book,
where you don't?
this book. I have to think about that. What do I wish I knew before I started writing this book?
Patricia, you're wowing us with your questions.
Yeah, this book is. It's got three couples in it, and each of them, their relationship to stuff is different. So
Mm.
there's Emily, the main character, and in her marriage, stuff is just a nuisance. Her husband keeps dragging it in. She keeps trying to get rid of it. Then there's Quinn, who's married to Walter, and he's a curator. He has advertising signs and he's beautiful taste, and he won't let her bring any of her stuff into their house. So that's the dynamic that stuff plays. And then there's um, uh, Ruth and Murph, and they're an elderly couple. He's just died, and she's just trying to figure out what to do with all of his crap. And what didn't I know before I started was that I was going to write a very complex mystery. Most of the time, my books are very, very character driven, and I let the character drive the story. And if I had let the characters completely drive this story, we would have driven right off a cliff, because the story has so many almost Hitchcockian twists in it. Things that look one way when you're reading it, and then you go 50 pages on and it's flipped.
You
Yeah.
pulled the switcheroo on us.
Yeah, and I had to be careful that I didn't make it, that I needed to make it completely believable and simple. Once you understood it, it was very simple what had happened. And until I figured it out, it wasn't simple. So I had to keep going back and forth. I listened to, while I was writing it, I heard Walter Mosley talk about writing. He's a wonderful crime fiction writer. And he said, story is what happened. Plot is the order in which it's revealed to the reader.
Ooh.
And
Yeah.
I thought, oh my God, that is the problem I'm having, is I'm telling the story. No, I'm telling the plot, and I haven't completely figured out the story. So I started outlining my book differently. Instead of just an outline of scene by scene, I outlined in two columns. This was the scenes, but this a second column of what was really happening behind the scenes. Yeah. And that helped me get everything straight, like who was alive when, and who was pretending to be where when, and which piece of evidence was planted or just happened to be there. I hate coincidences, so that doesn't happen very often. But I remember that was a very big aha moment. That's the thing about writing, is that if I had heard him say that 12 years ago, it would have gone right over my head. But at that moment, that's what I needed to hear, and that's the beauty of learning as you go.
Oh, Hallie, I love that. I love your approach and your energy and your teaching and learning philosophies. These are just, they're so wise and they're so meaningful. I'm just really appreciating the depth and texture of this time together. Patricia would also like to know.
Thank you, Patricia.
Yeah, Patricia, thank you for the great questions. She said, what did you learn when you found an agent? Did finding an agent help you learn anything? And what did you wish you knew before you were published?
Finding an agent. Trying to go back in my head. I wrote a mystery series before I wrote Careful What You Wish For. And I wrote it with a writing partner. We wrote, because I felt when I'm going to get to the answer. I felt when I started writing that I didn't have a story to tell, because I had been a mother, a teacher, I'd worked in high tech, and the voice balloon for that is zzz, tired, boring, put me to sleep. And so I partnered with a dear friend of mine, a guy I've known for 100 years, who runs a unit at Harvard's McLean Hospital. He treats people who have memory problems. And he also testifies in court evaluating people accused of murder.
Ooh.
Oh, what a perfect character for a book. So, and he loves murder mysteries. So we wrote 6 murder mysteries together. And that was when I needed my first agent. And I remember we finished the manuscript, and we submit. It was back in the day before you did it by email. That's how long ago it was. It was probably in the year 1998. And so here we have this manuscript that we have labored and revised and revised. It's been read by 1 million people. We love it. So I did what the books tell you to do. I went through all of the, there's a book about agents. I went through and I picked the agents who'd be right. I ended up with a list of about 23 agents, and I wrote a cover letter about my book. This is very standard. It's still the same, but now I did it in mail, real mail.
Yep.
And I wrote in the letter, my sister Nora has read this book and loved it. It was a lie. Nora would no more have read any of my work than she would have, danced naked on the Broadway train. No, that wasn't our relationship. Delia would read my book, but Delia doesn't have the same, But I did ask her if it was all right, and she had said, "Sure, you can say that as long as I don't have to read the book." So I took her at her word and I put it in there. So of course I sent out 23 queries. I got about 23 responses within 2 days. People wanting to see the whole book, which is a 350-page book. I now have to make 23 copies. I had to go to the Xerox. This is before email.
Yeah.
So I'm already ready for my career. I am in the hole, hundreds of dollars.
Yes. Yes.
So that was good training. From that, only one agent was really enthusiastic about the book. She was in a very good agency. She was with the Ellen Levine agency. Her name was Louise Quayle. And she was great. She gave us great notes. We had a lot of revising to do. She sent the manuscript to, she was in, my criteria was it had to be someone in New York City. Because in those days, the lower part of Manhattan was where all the publishers were, and there she was. Her office was on 14th Street and Broadway, whatever that big park is. And of course, the publisher who eventually bought the book is right across the street in the Flatiron Building, if I'm in the right intersection. It could be down at 8th, but anyway, I get confused in New York. And so she gave us a lot of notes. We made a lot of changes. And then she started sending it out. And one of the editors who critiqued the book and rejected it said, I saved all my rejection letters. That's my first piece of advice for everybody. Save your rejection letters, because I read them during my talks.
You still have them?
I still have them, yes. I read them all. Yeah, they're great.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you do save those.
I do save them, but they're just a file. Anyway, I got a rejection that said, when I'm buying a series, I need to care about what happened to the character before the book opened, and what's going to happen to the character after the book ends.
Ooh.
And there was, of course, a but. I don't really care about your character. So I looked at our character, and he was based on my friend. He was this guy who evaluates people accused of murder, and he has a case where a woman is shot in the head and left for dead. She's in a coma for weeks. She wakes up and claims, after a lot of police questioning, to remember who shot her. And the question for the psychologist is it possible with a wound as serious as hers that she could have recovered the memory? Or is it more a question of backfilling, where she is not deliberately lying, but making things up in order to fill that hole? So we had a great story. I thought we had a terrific hero, but for some reason, she didn't care about him at the beginning or at the end. So we added a subplot where his wife, before the book opens, was murdered. And through the course of investigating this crime that he becomes the expert witness in, he comes to terms with his own guilt about her death. Ooh. And the book sold. So we just took a subplot and wove it through, and of course made a lot of tweaks along the way. But that really taught me a lot about the main character's arc. That the main character, and particularly in a mystery is often about solving a crime, but it isn't. It's really about the main character taking a journey. And then who is the main character? It might be a detective who's not related to the crime. So how do you make it matter to that character? So it was a huge lesson that has served me very well since then.
Oh, Hallie, I love this. Thank you so much. This is so amazing. We have another question from the audience. Rena, one of our top community members. Hey, Rena, she said, did you find the switch from being a teacher to an author easy? Tell us about that.
It was so gradual. And I still teach a lot, but I don't have a teaching job. I don't want to be having to go anywhere on a regular basis. I didn't switch. I feel like I was one of those people who I just kept, here's the boat, here's the shore, and there are all these stepping stones. And I just kept taking one step and another step. And it was over many years. So I started teaching, and then I moved into high tech. But at some point, like everyone else, I got laid off. So then I had my own writing business, writing for clients, which gave me time to start writing my books. And I could also take classes, but you actually make a pretty good living as a technical writer. So I didn't have to work that hard, and it left me a lot of time. And I took classes and I met people. And I would say it was 10 years between the time that I decided I wanted to write a book and I had that, I turned in the manuscript with the extra plot line in it. 10 years. And I don't think that's unusual. I think for a lot of people, it can take, it's not like learning to ski the Black Diamond trails. It's not, it's and it depends a lot on who you are and also what else is going on in your life. I needed to wait till my kids were out of the house so that I could be in this room, which was their playroom, because I don't have a room in the house otherwise. And as Virginia Woolf says, you really do need a room to write.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
So I didn't do it fast. I did it very gradually. So, and I still teach. I actually, teaching is bliss for me. I just love it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And you have the kindness and the empathy and the desire to share knowledge that is the hallmark of all great teachers. So thank you for that. You're getting lots of love from the audience. Patricia says, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, patience, and insight. Getting so many thanks from our wonderful community members here. And yeah, so guys, keep the questions coming. This is your time with Hallie. While you're thinking of them, I'm going to, Rena says, thank you so much for answering my questions. Rena, thanks for sharing. While you guys are thinking of your last questions here, I'm going to ask Hallie some of our lightning round questions. So, Hallie, tell us, what's your weirdest writing ritual?
Oh, that's easy. Sharpening pencils.
Ooh, so is there a certain number you have to sharpen? Do you have to do
I
it a certain
have,
way?
I have, my mother had my mother was a writer. My parents
Oh,
were screenwriters.
okay.
But my mother did the writing. That is to say, she typed at the computer. She took shorthand while they argued and laughed and came up with stories. Um, and she always had a cup of soft leaded pencils. They were the color of uh, terracotta tile on the outside. And when you sharpen them, they got a long point, no erasers. And I couldn't use them because I'm left-handed. And the ink is the lead is so soft, your hand drags over you're not left-handed, right?
No, but it smears. Sometimes I challenge myself to write with my left hand to stimulate the right side of my brain, and your hand does drag across.
Yeah, so I would never be able to do that. But I love the idea of sharpening pencils as a ritual. And I have my electric pencil sharpener. I love the sound of it. And I love those points sticking up in the air. So I will sharpen pencils even though I actually work at the computer. I don't use, but I do draw. I mean, I'm not an artist at all. Oh my God, no. But I like to draw boxes and lines and tables and trees and bubble diagrams that help me think my way through plots. And that I do need. I use a pencil a lot for that.
Oh, wow, this is so cool. I've never heard of this as someone's weird writing ritual. So thanks for sharing your weird. Hallie, what's one book that's changed your life?
Whew, one book that has changed my life. Now you've got me stumped. I would have to go way back. I think the book that The Wizard of Oz.
How
So that's how old I
lovely.
am. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, The Wizard of Oz was. We had a copy that my mother had inscribed with a crayon when she was a kid. So that's how long ago that book came out. I think it was early part of the 20th century, if that's possible. But I can almost recite that whole first chapter about the great gray plain and just that sense of place. You know, the
Mm,
book begins. I don't know if you've read the book. The book is very different from the movie. It opens with Dorothy and the tornado within 2 pages.
yeah.
Yeah, and and it's just so evocative, that feeling of Kansas, and then she's in Oz. Actually, she's not. She's in Munchkin Land first, and then she has to get to Oz. But I use that book now. Actually, I use the movie even more as a model for for so many things, for
Mm,
setting, for inciting incident, for conflict in a story, for a character's arc and the challenges along the way, and the pit of despond in the end of Act Two, and then Act Three, where everything comes running back. It's such a perfect example, and everybody else knows it.
yes.
Yeah, you go to a writing conference and you say The Wizard of Oz, everybody knows the story. So I loved it as a kid. I use it a lot in my thinking about how to structure a cast of characters and a story. Again, because it's a shared. I mean, how many other stories are there that are that complex? I mean, the Three Bears, right? But seriously, uh, there really aren't any that I can think of where we really know. Like if I say to you, uh, "What a world! What a world!" You know what I'm talking about,
I
right?
know what you're talking about. Exactly. And yes, and my partner in crime, Jenna Blum, is saying that this book also changed her life. Jenna is also a New York Times bestselling author, and she wrote a book called Storm Chasers. So she actually went to Kansas, the land of
Wow.
Tornado Alley, and lived in Kansas and studied tornadoes and studied storms, and went in the little tank to, go into the tornado. And
Wow.
so, yeah, she's saying this book actually changed her life.
I
Ellen
just want
says,
to wave at Jenna. Hi, Jenna.
she says, hi, Jenna. Ellen says, do you like Wicked? What about The Wiz?
Well, that is an interesting question because
Mm.
I did read it. I haven't seen the play. It's a really long book. That's what I remember about it. And I remember adoring the first two-thirds of it. And then I kind of got pooped by the complexity of the story. But what I love about it is when I teach writing, one of the things I teach about is the web of character, that you have a main character who has a goal. And Dorothy's a perfect example. Her goal is to go home. In order to go home, she needs the ruby slippers. So the whole story is about Dorothy getting home and the ruby slippers. And the witch, of course, doesn't care whether Dorothy gets home or not, but she wants the ruby slippers. And the wizard doesn't care whether Dorothy gets home or not, but he doesn't want the witch to get the ruby slippers. So the whole thing revolves around ruby slippers. And then you have Glinda. See, I am getting to the whiz. Glinda, question I keep asking myself is, why didn't Glinda tell Dorothy that all she had to do was click her heels together 3 times in order to get home in
Mm.
Act 1? Why did she keep it a secret for that whole time? And that's bullshit that she had to find out for herself. I think that is just bullshit. I think Glinda needed Dorothy to kill her sister.
Ooh.
Yes. And that is what Wicked is about the relationship between Glinda and the witch that Dorothy landed the house on. And so
Ooh.
that's what I love about Wicked is it's such a, again, it's a great example of plot structure.
Yes, Hallie, thank you. So true. And I never had thought of that before in that way. So thank you. This is so amazing. Okay, I think we have time for 2 more lightning round questions. Hallie, you are going on a road trip. Would you rather go with Mary Shelley or Shirley Jackson?
Mary Shelley or Shirley, I guess Shirley Jackson. Except
Okay.
wasn't she a little bit crazy? I mean, I don't know.
She wrestled with depression. I think
Yeah.
they didn't fully understand depression back then,
No.
in the 60s.
I would
Uh,
never want to go with an alcoholic.
I think she did wrestle with
Yeah, and
alcoholism
so
a bit.
probably Mary Shelley. That I mean, I would never go anywhere with. My mother was an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic. My uncle was an alcoholic.
Okay.
I come from a family riven with them. None of my sisters, my children, knock wood, no severe alcoholism. But I left that behind me. I would never put myself in a position of that. You didn't want to hear that.
No, that is totally fair. And I like that. And I haven't heard that answer yet. And I like
I'm
that.
not surprised.
You get to your sleepaway camp and you have to choose a roommate. Do you choose Arthur Conan Doyle or Edgar Allan Poe?
Oh God. I know too much about both of them.
You're going to be up late talking. You're going to have flashlights. You're in your sleeping bag.
Well, it's got to be uh, Doyle. Yeah. Now Poe is tortured.
Yeah, I think I would also go with Doyle.
Yeah, but the problem with Holmes, Sir Arthur, is that he was a spiritualist.
Yes.
Yes, and on the other hand, his buddy and best friend was Houdini. I've done a
Well,
lot of reading about Houdini and Doyle, and Houdini really liked Doyle. So I probably could have come around on him.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe he leads a cool seance. Maybe you meet some cool dead authors. I mean, we don't know. You could meet a lot of different people at that at that spiritualist experience.
I
Uh,
did actually go to a spiritualist meeting once. Yeah, I know. I don't know if we have a minute to tell this story. Do
we have a minute for this story because this story sounds good.
I had a dear friend whose brother was murdered. This gets serious.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And in the aftermath of it, she, for various reasons, was guilt ridden about it, but also grief stricken. They were very close. And she experienced what she would have called visitations,
Hmm.
where she felt she saw him and spoke to him. She wasn't crazy.
No.
And I knew her well, and I never wrote it off the way I would have, I heard that about somebody. And so I actually wrote my first book with her, and we wrote it about that murder. It was a true crime. And we never published it. And one of the things that I did in the process of writing the book was I learned about grief counseling and that this visitation thing is not uncommon for people who are profoundly grieving. And I went to a spiritualist meeting in where was it? Methuen, I think, just north of Boston. And I had to take the Mystic Avenue exit to get there. And it was fascinating. It was really fascinating. She did a hands-on healing, which you probably can relate to as a yoga teacher because it's not at all unlike. And then she did she turned on the music and lowered the lights and put on the candles and had water reflecting on the ceiling, this big light, and everybody was bringing messages to each other from the spiritual plane, I think they called it. I don't think I got that right. Anyway, of course, I am such a skeptic. I mean, I just was afraid of being outed by all of it. And it was fascinating. Of course, I left there. I took notes just as fast as I could. And I have used that over and over again in my writing, both trying to understand. They were all in. I mean, there was nothing phony about what was going on. I mean, people were talking about feeling tornadoes in the room, and I didn't feel any of that. But they did. And I didn't doubt it. And so it's given me a pretty as a mystery writer, it's good to have a pretty healthy understanding of human foibles and behavior and what people will believe.
Yeah.
Them.
Oh, well, oh my gosh, Hallie, you have been an absolutely wonderful guest. We thank you so much for having us here. Congratulations on the paperback debut of Careful What You Wish For. We will all be picking up our copy, and we can't wait to have you back next time right here on Mighty Mysteries. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah. You've been a fabulous host. Thanks.
It's been my pleasure.